Good morning, kids. It's good to be back with you. How are you this morning? Are you good? Are you having a good morning? I hope you are. And even if you aren't, I have a really bad headache today. So if I look a little like, ugh, that's why. So I hope you're having a better day than I'm having. But if you're not having a great day, we're going to talk about how to have good days in the midst of an evil world, right? That's what Peter's going to talk about this morning. What do I mean by an evil world? Well, there is a lot of good and a lot of beauty in this world, which you've probably noticed. But because it's also fallen, because of sin and the effects of sin, there's also a lot that's bad and broken. And sometimes when we encounter something that's bad or broken, it can be troubling and it can even feel overwhelming when we encounter those things. So Peter is going to give us, you remember Peter? Yes. Peter is going to give us some really wise words about how to handle those things the way that Jesus handled those things. Okay. Are you guys ready? Okay. So last time Peter was talking to husbands and wives, if you remember that. And this week he starts off the passage with all of you. He's saying all of you. So he's talking to all of us, including you. Okay. And he says that we are all to have 5 things. Okay. First of all, he says the first one is unity of mind. What does that mean? We all need to have the same mindset. Okay. Now, what is a mindset? A mindset is simply a way that you set your mind. Okay. So if you set something to go a certain direction, that's the direction that it's going to go. Okay. If you set your car to go a certain direction, you set your Hot Wheels car to go a certain direction. It's the same with our minds. So we set our minds to go a certain direction. When we set our minds on things above and on obedience to God and on His ways and on His kingdom, then we will be one with each other instead of me going this way and you going that way. When we have a mindset on God, we'll have unity of mind. The second thing he says is to have sympathy. Now, sympathy means that we care and that we feel each other's pain. You know the feeling when your friend or your parent genuinely feels happy when you're happy or genuinely feels sad when you're sad? That's sympathy. It's a wonderful feeling. If you have a friend, you know, I do, if you have friends who genuinely sympathize with how you're feeling, it is tremendously comforting. So he says that he wants us to sympathize with one another. The third thing that he tells us is brotherly love. We talked about this earlier, a few chapters earlier, and this is that we are to love each other like the bestest brothers and sisters, okay, because we are the family of God. The fourth thing that he says is a tender heart. Now, a tender heart is the opposite of a hard heart. Okay. It's hard to necessarily describe exactly, but when we feel hurt, it's easy to not want to get hurt again. And so we harden our hearts, especially if there's a certain person that has hurt you or a situation that's been hurtful. We tend to want to harden our hearts so that we don't get hurt again. But God is saying to keep our hearts soft toward Him and toward each other. And then lastly, the fifth thing is a humble mind. God loves humility, and humility is recognizing that I don't know everything. I'm not the expert on everything. I'm not God. I'm not in charge, and I can honor others and obey God if I have a humble mind. Now, Peter then tells us how to respond if we are treated unkindly. Sadly enough, being treated unkindly is inevitable. That means it's bound to happen in this world. He says, don't repay evil for evil, or if someone insults you, don't insult them back. So Peter is saying, don't get even. I don't know if you guys have ever felt that desire, like you want to get even. If someone hurts you, you want to hurt them back. That's our natural flesh tendency. And he's saying, don't get even. We're not called to live in a way where we keep record of wrongs. Okay. In fact, Paul says that in 1 Corinthians. He says, love keeps no record of wrong. That means if someone hurts you, I'm not keeping track of it so that I can hurt them back. We don't need to pay back mean things that someone does to us. Like a toddler, if you get hit, they want to hit back. And he's saying, don't live like that. Peter says, if someone mistreats you, I actually want you to bless them. Okay. Don't just not get even, but actually bless them. Now, Jesus talks about this a lot in Matthew on the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5:38-42. And I call this the second mile way to live. Okay, going the second mile. It means that if someone is mean to you, then instead of you being mean back, you try to think of a way to bless them. Okay. If your sibling did something to you that really hurt or bothered you, you might offer to do their chore for them the next day, or take their dish into the kitchen for them, or just something that play the game that they would want to play that day. Do the activity that they would want to do. It's not easy. Okay, that's probably the hardest thing you will ever do. Our tendency is always to want to get back and harden our hearts. But if you can do it by the power of God, it is very powerful, and it will set you free from feeling like you have to get even all the time. Okay, sometimes it's just as simple as praying for the person that has hurt you and asking God to bless them even when you don't feel like it. So then Peter quotes from Psalm 34, Psalm of David, and he gives this secret for life. He says, if you want to love your life, okay, if you want to love your life and you want to see good days, which I think all of us do, then here's what to do. And this time he gives us 4 things, okay? He says, number 1, don't speak evil. Okay, be careful to only speak what is true, what is helpful, what is necessary, and what is kind. Okay, man, our words, it's a huge one. If we can just work on what comes out of our mouths, there's a lot to say in the Bible about this, but we will go a long way. So he says, don't speak evil. Number 2, he says, don't speak deceit. Okay, so again, he's still talking about our words. Deceit. We talked about deceit a couple weeks ago. Do you remember what it is? It's anything that is misleading or lying or dishonesty, anything like that. It's not necessarily all things that we say an outright lie, but he's saying don't speak anything that is deceptive. The third thing he says to do in this sort of secret recipe is to turn away from evil and do good. Okay. Now, following Jesus is not just about not doing bad stuff, okay? Like there's a list of bad stuff and I'm not going to do the bad stuff, okay? Following Jesus is actually about seeking good. It's about pursuing good with all of our strength and all of our energy. That's what Peter's telling us to do. And then he says, number 4, seek peace and pursue it. Now, every single time we interact with someone, we have the opportunity to seek peace or not. Okay, when you interact with your siblings, with your parents, with your friends, we have the opportunity to seek peace or to seek discord or strife. So seeking peace is something that we actively work toward. We choose words that are peaceable. Okay, we choose words that are soft, that are kind, that are not going to stir up anger or drama. Okay, we don't say things that stir up strife. And then Peter says that the eyes of the Lord are on the righteous and that his ears are open to their prayers. Now, this is great, great news. Okay. When we believe in Jesus and we obey him and we walk in his ways, he's saying that God is watching over us and listening attentively to our prayers. And I definitely want that. Okay. Then Peter talks a little bit about what to do if you are doing the right thing and you suffer for it. Again, this might be the hardest thing in the whole world. When you try to do the right thing or you try to help and then you get blamed or mistreated or someone judges you harshly or you get in trouble for it and you can feel like, wait a minute, I didn't do anything wrong. I was just trying to help. I was trying to do the right thing. That is a very natural way to feel. Okay. But here's what Peter's saying. Peter says, don't get all upset about it. He basically says, don't worry about it. He says, don't be afraid of people who mistreat you for doing right. Always keep Christ. Peter says, always keep Christ first in your heart. And whenever you have a chance, tell people about him. Okay. That's what you need to be most concerned about. And if you remember in chapter 2, we saw that it was a gracious thing in the sight of God when we do good and suffer. Same thing here. Okay. Why? Because that's what Jesus did. Jesus did good all the time, and he suffered for it unfairly. But that's the gospel, right? He didn't get upset. He didn't fight back. He didn't demand his own way. He was willing to be unfairly judged and mistreated and mocked and made fun of and humiliated and beaten and even killed because he was willing to do that for us. And he calls us to follow in his footsteps. So we're not going to get even. Okay, we're going to bless the people that hurt or bother us. We're going to keep our mouths from evil and deceit. We're going to seek peace and do good. This is what we're called to. And Peter says, if we do this, we will obtain a blessing. Okay, so God promises to give us supernatural blessing in our life when we submit to him and go his way. Sound good? All right. We love you guys. Have a great week.